Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Meetinghouse of Provincetown, where we affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and where we support each other on our spiritual search for truth and meaning. My name is Rev Kate Wilkinson, and I am so glad that you have joined us this morning. Welcome to those of you in the room, and welcome also to those joining us on our live stream. Today is Flower Communion Sunday, which means that we'll be creating a communal bouquet a little later in today's service. It's a tradition that reaches back to 1923 and Norbert Čapek's Unitarian congregation in Czechoslovakia. It was brought to the United States by his wife Maya Čapek in 1940, and we have been celebrating Flower Sunday ever since. Before we begin our worship service, I have just a few announcements to share. On Saturday, July 2nd, the Social Action Committee and other Outer Cape peace activists invite you to stand out along Route 6 from the Rotary in Orleans all the way down to Provincetown. Between 10 a.m. and noon, pick a safe spot somewhere along Route 6 and stand out with signs, drums, and anything else you can think of to help raise peace awareness as visitors head onto the Cape for the 4th of July weekend. This is a pro-peace and anti-war action. Help us to visualize a world of peace and justice. Next Sunday, it will be Father's Day and also Juneteenth, an important holiday in African American community. We will be telling you more about that holiday and its history during our worship service that day. But then later in the afternoon, you are invited to come back for a ceremony and a big cookout out on our lawn, because we are hosting the town-wide Juneteenth celebration. All are invited from 2 to 5 o'clock on June 19th. I'm so glad folks are excited about that. We got claps for that last week too. That means people are coming, yay! And speaking of our lawn, it's a nice day out today, and we invite you to join us for a cup of coffee or tea out on our lawn today after service. It was so much fun last week, so as weather permits, we will be continuing to do this summer. Now let's take a moment to affirm our community's covenant. I invite you to repeat each line after me. Love is the spirit of this meeting house.
Love is the spirit of this meeting house.
This is our great covenant.
This is our great covenant.
To dwell together in peace.
To dwell together in peace.
To seek the truth in love.
To seek the truth in love.
And to help one another.
And to help one another.
At this time, I invite Bruce to light our chalice for us. And as we light our chalice here in the sanctuary, I invite those of you watching from home to light a candle wherever you are. In that way, we can feel connected even while we are apart.
A Place of Belonging and Caring by Kimberly Ann Tomczyk Carlson. It is not by chance that you arrived here today. You have been looking for something larger than yourself. Inside of you, there is a yearning, a calling, a hope for more, a desire for a place of belonging and caring. Through your struggles, someone nurtured you into being, instilled a belief in a shared purpose, a common yet precious resource that belongs to all of us when we share. And so you began seeking a beloved community, a people that does not put fences around love, a community that holds its arms open to possibilities of love, a heart home to nourish your soul and share your gifts. Welcome home. Welcome to worship.
Thank you. Please join me now in a spirit of meditation and prayer. If you have a joy or a sorrow on your heart this morning, you are welcome to light a silent candle during the prayer or at any time during the service at the table to the right of the pulpit. And there is a journal there to record your thoughts and prayers. Our prayer this morning is by Lynn Cox. Spirit of life, ground of our being, root of unified mystery, growing into myriad branches of expression, bring us together now. Bring us close to the earth, ear to the whispering grass, quietly, attentively, waiting with slow breaths, listening for the very stones to cry out with their rocky stories of tectonic plates meeting and parting, meeting. Their mineral memories of Hadean days, molten rocks flowing and joining, their ancient legends of stars born out of the collapse of other stars. Help us to remember. Help us to piece together our oneness with matter, our oneness that matters. With one more deep breath, may we rise, star-stuffed, walking and rolling across the surface of an impossible blue-green planet. May we join together to heal what is divided. May we find wholeness within, without, among, between, eternal source, seed of the universe. Help us to grow peace. So be it. Blessed be. Amen.
Garden Prayer by David M. Horst. Early in the morning, before the children are awake and while the grass is still dewy, I like to walk in my garden. It's my garden only because it shares the same small plot of land my family and I inhabit. The garden does not really belong to me. I belong to it, at least for the short time I'm here. Today I'm still in my slippers and have my first cup of coffee in my hand. Much of what grows had been planted 2 or 3 homeowners ago. Some I've planted since our arrival, but if they belong to anyone or anything, the plants and flowering trees I come to see and smell: viburnum, dogwood, magnolia, and crabapple, belong to the sun and rain and soil. These living things are a beauty not of my making, though surely made of my desire. At the moment, the rose bushes are in full burst of red and perfume. The hydrangeas are sure to open their moppy heads as soon as the sun falls upon them. The weedy-looking globe thistles are turning lovely blue and spiky. The foxglove, however, rules the garden. Its central stalk is 5 feet high and heavy with pink, scoop-shaped blossoms with charming freckles inside. I am awed by the abundance. I'd intended to walk the garden simply to observe and wonder. But there's a weed that must be pulled, a stray stem that needs to be pruned, a blossom drooping and fading that should be snipped. So I set down my coffee cup on the back porch, grab a small pail, and go to work. I end up with muddy hands, wet slippers, and a pail full of weeds and trimmings. Why can't I simply observe and wonder? Won't the beauty of my small garden world survive without me? I step back to the porch to retrieve my coffee, now cold, stamp the dew off my slippers, and take one look back at the garden before I return to the house. The garden is no more beautiful now than when I first arrived. My weed pulling, pruning, and snipping haven't really improved the garden, nor made that much of a difference as far as I know. It's like prayer. The words I speak don't really change anything, but I know they change me.
Thank you. I hope you'll appreciate the foxglove in our neighbor's garden on your walk out the path as you leave. Now is the time in our service where we take a collection for the ongoing support of this Meetinghouse and our shared ministry. As we enjoy a musical reflection, we welcome your donations here in the sanctuary or online through PayPal or Venmo. You can find that information on our website, uumh.org. On and off-site, your offerings will now be gratefully received. old historical house in Plymouth, where I grew up, was having what they called a pilgrim breakfast. You could tour the 1677 house, churn butter, listen to 17th century music, and eat a breakfast of fish cakes, baked beans, and cornbread with butter that you had churned yourself. The Antiquarian Society has been hosting this breakfast at the Harlow House since 1933. And one of the traditions is to have young girls in pilgrim dresses walking around selling tussie mussies. Does anyone know what a tussie mussie is? No. What about a nosegay? Closer? Basically, back in medieval and Elizabethan days, and also when the Pilgrims and others invaded the native lands of the Wampanoag people and began to settle here, they didn't have many changes of clothes. And those clothes were linen and woolen and soaked with sweat. They didn't bathe very regularly either. They stank, okay? So a tussie mussie was a little bundle of flowers and strong-smelling herbs tied with a piece of ribbon that they could pin or tie to their outfit that brought a little color and beauty to their day, but could also be held under their nose when the noxious odors of their daily life were becoming overwhelming. Now you could also pass messages to people by gifting them a tussie mussie. Different flowers meant different things. Daisies meant innocence. Forget-me-nots were undying love. Lily of the valley meant trustworthiness. When the Antiquarian Society asked my mother to take on the Tussie Mussie project that year, it kind of sounded like fun. My best friend from Western Mass was staying with us that week, and we were both game to dress up and play with flowers and collect money. The woman at the Antiquarian Society offered up her garden for us to pick flowers from the day before. We were to make 100 or so of these tiny bouquets. No problem, we thought. Well, it turns out that assembling 100 tussie mussies is a lot of work. Each little bundle needed to be carefully wrapped in floral tape and then tied with a ribbon and attached to a pin. And each little bouquet required 5 or 6 flowers to make them look full and to give them that all-important scent. None of this could be done in advance because these were fresh bouquets. So the day before the breakfast, we went out to collect flowers. We quickly stripped that lady's yard of every single flower and still did not have enough for 100 tussie mussies. We also raided our own yard, including an abundant patch of mint, still coming up short. What were we to do? It was getting late in the day before the breakfast. We were desperate. Store-bought flowers wouldn't do. They wouldn't look historically accurate. So do you know what we did? We got in the car and we drove around looking for wildflowers. Daisies, yarrow, Queen Anne's lace. These things sometimes grow by the side of the road, on hillsides and in ditches. Eventually, even patches of flowering weeds would do. Whenever one of us would spot a bit of color, we would pull the car over and get out, each of us wielding a pair of scissors, and we would quickly harvest all we could before jumping back into the car, hopefully not being spotted by any of my classmates, driving by wondering what the heck we were doing in the ditch. The next morning, we woke up very early and assembled 100 tussie mussies in time for the pilgrim breakfast. I have a picture of me and my best friend Lauren in our polyester pilgrim suits, sweating in the summer heat with a basket of tussie mussies in our lap. We never volunteered for the Harlow House again. But none of us have ever forgotten that weekend. and she and I discovered that now, whenever we are driving anywhere in the early summer, we are both constantly appraising the size of the road to see where we might scavenge flowers from in a pinch. Because you never know what might be blooming in ditches. I was doing that on my way here this morning. In fact, worried that we might not have enough flowers for our visitors. You know, there's a long history of flowers blooming in ditches. Flowers bringing beauty to desolate places. Flowers being grown in trenches, even. Did you know that soldiers in World War I grew gardens in the trenches and behind battle lines? There was a lot of time to pass. And the only antidote to the brutality of war seemed to be to create some beauty where they could. In the trenches, they transplanted wildflowers. They used exploded German shells as flower pots. In 1916, a journalist traveled along the trenches at Ypres and was amazed by the repeated sights of a little vegetable garden, and next to it, for beauty's sake, a flower garden, and next to that, a little graveyard. In 1917, the shattered remains of Cartigny were horticulturally transformed by a battalion of the Scots Guards. They designed beds in the shape of their regimental cap badge, a thistle. They even laid out a floral clock like the one in Princes Street Gardens in Edinburgh. Their inspiration was Private Armstrong, formerly a gardener in peacetime for a Scottish laird. He laid out rockeries and inspired every Scotsman around him to garden, using petrol cans with holes in their bottoms as watering cans. The battalion's commanding officer gave out gardening prizes and a special prize to the genius of Armstrong. A fellow private described him as one of the strongest men in the battalion, but also one of the most gentle. In 1916, under the tolerant German commandant Count Schwerin, prisoners at the Ruhleben prisoner of war camp near Berlin began to grow flowers and vegetables. The Crown Princess of Sweden sent seeds. Sweet peas, tobacco plants, and dahlias became the pride of the Ruhleben RHS. Its priority was beauty. In 1917, it also began a massive nursery of vegetables, soon producing 33,000 heads of lettuce. It had its own newspaper, with a gardening columnist, of course. He wrote by the name of Forget-Me-Not. The Germans had a soft spot for the gardens. Behind their own battle lines, their soldiers were growing flowers in trenches, too. At the 21st Casualty Clearing Station by the River Somme was a garden made by Stanhope Walker, a hospital chaplain. In the busy summer, the sides of the hospital tents would be raised up so that the injured soldiers could gaze at the gardens. Walker noted that more soldiers were interested in his gardens than in his sermons. In May of that year, Private J.W. Greystone wrote about all the digging at the front. When the war is over, we shall be lost without a garden, he said. So country houses will be in great demand. We shall all keep gardens, and they will be the best anywhere if turning the earth over and over will do any good. When the war ended, wildflowers multiplied in no man's land in France. The shells had churned up the ground, and the explosives had contained nitrogen. The poet Isaac Rosenberg has written of poppies whose roots are in man's veins. C.S. Lewis wrote in The Weight of Glory, "We do not merely want to see beauty, though God knows even that is bounty enough. We want something else which can hardly be put into words, to be united with the beauty we see, to pass into it, to receive it into ourselves, to bathe in it, to become part of it." This is the saving grace of nature, to become part of the beauty, to breathe into its solace, to bloom in ditches. Today I invite you to become part of the beauty you see. I invite you to bring your flower forward and place it into one of our vases on our altar to create a communal bouquet. It's been a little while since we've moved around in this space, but I think we'll remember how to do it. First off, anyone who has difficulty moving about, you can either give your flower to someone else to bring forward, or just come up here any old way and cut right to the front of the line. Others, let's begin with this side of the congregation, from the front to the back, and you can come up this way. And then this section, you can reach that line by going out the back and around. And then you all can return to your seats through this middle and far aisle. Does that make sense? Now, folks at home, you can enjoy watching this ritual. And then at the end of it, I'm going to put in a bunch of flowers into the vases for you. So you are also included in today. Let's give it a whirl. My worship committee and other, actually that's later. Yes, let's just give it a whirl. Everyone come up and bring your flower as Ada plays. Thank you. In 1969, Reverend William Brooks Rice celebrated Flower Sunday with his congregation. Reverend Rice had been the chair of the Universalist and Unitarian Joint Merger Commission a few years earlier, bringing together those two very different and very similar traditions. He thought that was a challenge. But 1969 was another very challenging year. Some of you might remember the scene. It was the year Neil Armstrong landed on the moon. But there was also a sort of clash of cultures going on. Young people were expressing their anti-establishment beliefs, and anti-war demonstrations were gaining traction in opposition to the war in Vietnam. Woodstock attracted 350,000 people, but it was also the year of the Stonewall riot, the trial of the Chicago 7, the Charles Manson murders. At my alma mater, Cornell, 80 armed black students took over Willard Straight Hall, protesting racial injustice and demanding a Black Studies program. All over the U.S., police forces cracked down on student protests. James Earl Ray pled guilty to the murder of Dr. Martin Luther King. Sirhan Sirhan was convicted for assassinating Robert Kennedy. Jack Kerouac died of alcoholism. From the trenches of that year, Reverend Rice wrote this for the flower ritual at his Unitarian Universalist church. On a day such as this, may a great change come upon us. The sounds we have been hearing have been discordant. The sights we have been seeing have been violent. The words we have been reading have been hateful. All this has been wearying, discouraging, and distracting. In our hearts we had a dream of love, and in our minds we had a pattern of community, but this has been a sorry season of discontent, most difficult for visions. Today is a new day, truly an hour for hope and joy and gladness. Let us be thankful for the persistence of flowers and open ourselves to their long wisdom. Often they grow in spite of terrible winters and miserable summers. Strange beauty greets us in unexpected places, as if there is a particular grace that is stronger than our carelessness and indifference. But when we tend our gardens with love and care, the reward can be greater than the effort. For flowers ever speak to us of wonders and glories yet to be, of hopes fulfilled if we tend our gardens and our homes and our communities with patience and wisdom and love. May this be true for us too in this season of discontent. May we look for the beauty by the side of the road, in the trenches of our lives. And may we too learn to bloom in the ditches. Amen. And blessed be. It has become our practice to pose a question based on the theme of the service each week. It can be a topic of sharing at your dinner table tonight or with friends during the week. If you would like to delve deeper into this topic, please join us for our midweek coffee hour Tuesday at 5 on Zoom. Let us know if you need that link. Here is our question for this week. What is your favorite flower and why? What is your favorite flower and why? Thank you for joining us this morning. Thank you for joining us this As Ada offers us a postlude, our worship committee members and other volunteers will help to pass out flowers. The idea is to bring a different flower home with you than the one you brought. But stick around until the end of the postlude. Let's begin. And with these closing words by Lynn Unger, what a gathering. The purple tongues of iris licking out at spikes of lupin, the orange crepe skirts of poppies lifting over buttercup and daisy. Who can be grim in the face of such abundance? There is nothing to compare, no need for beauty to compete. The voluptuous rhododendron and the plain grass are equally filled with themselves, equally declare the miracles of color and form. This is what community looks like. This vibrant jostle, stem by stem, declaring the marvelous joining. This is the face of communion, the incarnation once more gracefully resurrected from winter. Hold these things together in your sight. Purple, crimson, magenta, blue. You will be feasting on this long after the flowers are gone. Hold on a second, I want to take your picture. You look amazing from up here. Go in peace.